Hello friends, today we are going to study about types of business letters as part 2 of unit 2 entitled Writing Skills in the syllabus of Business Economics. Business letters are written outside the organization with the intention of carrying out business activity. Such letters are generally written with the intention of getting the task accomplished. It is therefore essential that the letter be drafted in such a way that it evokes interest in the reader's mind and leads the reader into taking appropriate action. The frequently written business letters are persuasive letters, request letters, good news letters and bad news letters. Let us first discuss about persuasive letters. Persuasive letters are an attempt to convince the reader to do something. They have a strong point of view about an idea or problem. They use powerful words to influence the readers. They are written to change the receiver's attitude, belief or action. Reference letters, sales letters, collection letters belong to this category. Though the persuasive letters aim at the reader's positive action, it should also succeed in creating a good relationship between the writer and the reader. While drafting the persuasive letter, the writer has to adopt reader-friendly attitude. The persuasive letter differs from other business letters on 3 counts. 1. They may not be dated. 2. There may be no personal salutation, and 3. There is usually a postscript urging the reader to take action by the specified deadline. IDA. The guiding principle of writing such persuasive letters is IDA. Such goal can be achieved by following the acronym of IDA while drafting letters. A stands for attention, I stands for interest, D stands for desire and A stands for action. A stands for attention. The sender must catch the receiver's attention by encouraging him to hear about the sender's idea. I stands for interest. So, the sender must cultivate the receiver's interest by explaining the relevance of his or her idea. D stands for desire. In the next step, the sender must intensify the receiver's desire by explaining how the change will benefit the receiver personally or professionally. A stands for action. The sender at the end should suggest the action that he or she wants the receiver to take. The letter can be drafted in such a way that the opening paragraph captures the attention of the reader. The main body creates the desire in the reader's mind to accomplish the task by intensifying the reader's interest in the task, and the last paragraph persuades the reader to take some action. Here we are going to discuss 2 types of persuasive letters. The first is sales letter. Now the question is, what is a sales letter? A sales letter is a part of advertising. It is selective in the sense that it aims to sell particular kind of goods or services to selected types of customers. A good sales letter must be able to arouse interest, create desire, carry conviction and induce action. The writer should capture the reader's attention by making a startling statement of fact, a remedial solution to the problem, an alarming question, or offering a special product, scheme, or plan. The introductory paragraph can have proverbs, quotations, striking information including figures, stories and anecdotes, split opening, a conditional sentence, questions, a command, or an exclamation to grab the reader's attention. In the middle section, the writer should arouse and intensify the reader's interest by giving details and explaining the reader his benefits by accepting what has been proposed in the letter. In the concluding paragraph, the reader should be persuaded to take action by reminding of the benefits which he can avail of if he accepts the proposed offer. A sales letter creates the impact that is achieved by an effective advertisement. It attempts to convert its target audience into potential customers. For sample letter, kindly refer the section of Writing Persuasive Letters in Business Communication, Concepts, Cases and Applications by P.D. Chaturvedi and Mukesh Chaturvedi on page 136 to 138. Now we shall talk about collection letters. Collection letters are written to those customers who have purchased goods on credit but have failed to make payment by due date. It is then the supplier has to make efforts to collect the dues. The supplier has to resort to writing letters other than reminding the customer through telephone calls, telegrams, fax or personal visits. A collection letter has two tasks at hand: one, to get the money, and two, to retain the customer's goodwill. For this, the writer of the letter should have good understanding and knowledge of his customer's handling of the dues as well as his present circumstances. The customer may be forgetful, busy, dissatisfied with goods or services, hates to part with money, has too many credit obligations, or would pay only to avoid losing credit reputation. Collection letters are letters written in series. Delinquent customers pay only if they are reminded often and with increasing pressure. Collection letters are persuasive and constructive in nature. They try to convince the customer that it is beneficial for him to settle the dues. There are three stages to drafting collection letter. The first stage is known as reminder stage, wherein the customer can be reminded of making payment after the due date has passed. Such letter is a routine affair without any personal implication. The second stage is that of appeal, wherein the supplier attempts to find out the reason behind customer's non-payment and insists for the payment to be released at the earliest. The supplier in the last stage warns the customer of legal action in case of non-payment. The last letter merely informs the customer that the account has been handed over to the company's lawyer. It should be kept in mind that each letter should be written after a gap of at least 15 days from the date of dispatch of the previous letter. The tone and style of all these letters may vary but are never devoid of courtesy. The customer should not be made angry or humiliated. The customer should not be offered two alternative actions at the end of the collection letter, as it may prompt the customer to defer the payment. Now we shall talk about request letters. Request letters are also persuasive in nature. Such letters are drafted when one requests for information, action, products, adjustments or any other matter. Such letter begins with the request followed by justification and explanatory details that will help the reader execute the request correctly. Before drafting a request letter, the sender should be clear and specific about the favor he wants from the receiver. The sender should state the purpose of writing letter without being dramatic or manipulative. The sender should state the main idea with all ideas at the outset only. However, such idea should be carefully worded so that the sender does not sound harsh or unclear. Instead of demanding action like send me the details of, one should soften the request by using words like please or maybe I would appreciate. The sender should explain and justify his request in the middle part of the letter. If there is more than one request, then it should be expressed using a pattern of listing. However, such listing should be logically and coherently done. The closing of the letter should contain a specific request for action along with an expression of appreciation for the time spent in considering the request. One should avoid expression like thanking you in advance or waiting for a positive response. The receiver can be thanked after the sender's request has been complied with. In order to make the request letter effective, the sender should address the letter to an individual and not to the company. Letters placing orders, letters requesting information and action, letters of claims and adjustments, letters requesting references and recommendations are various types of request letters drafted in the business setup. The reply to such request letters can be positive or negative. One ought to be positive in drafting a negative response. As a matter of fact, negative information should be embedded in a positive context. So, instead of saying the office closes at 5:30, the office remains open until 5:30 should be said. Good news letters. A good news letter relays positive information. It is that business letter which conveys good news to the receiver. It is the kind of letter that any organization wants to send or receive because the receiver will be glad to get it. The purpose behind sending good news letter is to give information or to reassure the receiver or to build a good image of the organization or to cement a good relationship between the sender and the receiver or to reduce further correspondence on the subject. Answers to requests for information and action, grants of claims and requests for adjustment, recommendations, informative messages, good news announcements and goodwill messages fall under the category of good news letter. Any good news letter basically consists of three parts. The good news is put in the first paragraph of the letter. Consequently, the subject line and the first paragraph should always be loud and clear so that the receiver does not miss it if he or she is in receipt of lots of letters. The particulars of the news are explained in the middle part of the letter. The body of such letters is typically the longest. Everything is explained in such detail that there is no scope of confusion or doubt. Such letter should always end on the friendly note. A good news letter should always exhibit you attitude. So, instead of writing, I am pleased to inform you that after deliberating the matter carefully, our personnel committee has recommended you for appointment as a staff accountant. You should say, You have been selected to join our firm as a staff accountant beginning from March 20. Kindly refer Writing Routine and Positive Messages in Business Communication Today by Bovi, Thill and Chaturvedi on page number 214 to 240. Now we shall talk about bad news letters. Bad news letter is a letter which conveys negative or unpleasant information without irritating the receiver. Drafting a bad news letter is the most difficult thing because the sender has to break the bad news while retaining the receiver's goodwill. Refused requests, refusing adjustment of claims and complaints, credit refusals, bad news about orders, declining invitation and request for favors, and bad news about prices and services belong to the category of bad news letter. The purpose of bad news letter is not just to give bad news to the receiver, but also make the receiver understand and accept the bad news while maintaining as much goodwill as possible. The receiver should be convinced that he has been taken seriously and that the sender's decision is fair and reasonable. There are two ways of planning bad news letter. One, direct plan, and two, indirect plan. There are three steps involved in direct plan, namely bad news decision with or without buffer in the opening paragraph, explanation for it in the middle paragraph, and the letter should conclude with a courteous end. The indirect plan consists of the buffer, reasons, bad news and positive close. A buffer is a neutral or a positive statement that allows the sender to delay the negative news. A buffer statement can be a result of some agreement, appreciation, assurance, compliment, cooperation, good news, neutral, courtesy or understanding. One should avoid overbearing attitude, apologies, wordy and irrelevant phrases in the buffer statement. Such statement should not be unnecessarily long. The reason for sending bad news letter should be drafted in third person, impersonal and passive language. Negative, counterproductive words and accusing tone should be avoided in order to maintain the receiver's self-respect. Bad news should be given once the receiver is psychologically ready for it. The sender should minimize the time and space in breaking such news. Complex or compound sentences should be used to convey such news. Such letter should end on a positive note. A positive close helps in building goodwill by offering a suggestion for action or providing a look toward the future. Kindly refer Writing Negative Messages in Business Communication Today by Bovi, Thill and Chaturvedi on page 254 to page 292. Summary. Business letters are letters written outside the organization for the purpose of business. Such letters are classified into several types on the basis of its purpose and content. In a business organization, one may be required to draft persuasive letters, sales letters, collection letters, request letters, good news letters and bad news letters. Friends, I hope you have understood how various business letters are written. Thank you.